All right, let's take a couple minutes and go over this. Before I do that, though, I wanted to show you this because I just got sent it. Rankin Wentzville is having their first car show. You may be asked to work it if you haven't already. Saturday, April 14th, here, starting at 10 o'clock. If you have a classic car and you want to show it, let me know and I'll let the guy running it know. Okay. All right. So this was it. I gave you a picture basically, and I said write the app. I'm not going to read the stuff. You can all read it. I'm going to suggest tomorrow that when you take the test, just as I mentioned here, that you go out to that site, you use a relative layout. All right. I will tell you when you take your next test, not this one, but your next test, which will be on chapters 5 through 9, you will not be able to use a relative layout. I'm going to ask that you use a different one because chapter 5 and 6 are all about different kinds of layouts. All right? All right. I will expect that you're going to do this tomorrow too. You'll use good naming conventions for your variables, your constants, your methods, etc. Your logic will be sound. I'm going to ask that you modularize it. It's the same kind of stuff that I always ask you to do. So I don't think there should be any surprises in any of that stuff. All right. Now, going back and actually looking at the app itself, I found this interesting. Maybe you don't. But right here I put a hint in. So if you click on this, it's got a hint over here. It just says enter a number from 1 to 100. Even for the hint, it says I shouldn't hard code it, that I should use the strings file, which I guess does make sense when you think about it. All right. But just so you see that, and it's showing me that it's literally flagging that. All right, so again, what I should do is grab all this. Come over to my strings. Oops, my strings.xml file. Put that in like that, come back into here, and change that to hint. And once I did that, it's back where it was, and I have no error, or no warning, I should say. All right? What you create tomorrow is a little more complex than this, but not a lot. All right? And I'm not even going to lie to you. I kind of stole it from something I found out online. All right? And you can go out there and take a look at it too, tomorrow. That's not a problem. All right, so let's take a look at the actual code. Am I right in assuming that everybody understands naming conventions? Again, if you don't like these, again, it used to be that the naming convention for Microsoft, and I may have told you about this already, I don't know, but like if you decide for your text views you want to start them all TV, so you want that to be TV title or whatever. I don't really care if you do that. All that I'm asking is that you come up with your own standard and you follow that. All right? That's really it. But so I just kept them the way they are. Text view title, text view guess, edit text guess, button calculate, and button clear. All right? And as you can see, I use the strings .xml file for each one of these, and really for that one too now. All right? Am I right in assuming that everybody can create an interface that looks like this with no problem? All right. I'm not going to have you stick a bunch of buttons on there and worry about sticking, putting it in there and having it look real nice. No, that's not that big a thing. And tomorrow, when you're working on this, please don't spend more than 5 or 10 minutes doing the interface. All right. And even if you go, well, you're not going to like it. It looks ugly. I don't care. I'd rather have a fully functioning app with an ugly interface than a non-functioning app with a beautiful interface. All right? All right, so this is what I added. I imported Android View.View. I don't know if you know what View.View is, and it's not really well documented any place. But I went online and I tried to look, and I found this. I'm not saying it's great, but it's not too bad. And somebody asked there, Meaning of ViewV in Android Studio. First of all, the V means nothing. You can call it Ralph. It really doesn't matter. But it's View followed by whatever name you give it, and most people give it a lowercase v. It's just kind of convention that you do that. Well, if you go down into this is from Stack Overflow. And basically, for lack of better words, what it says is anything that you may want to be able to reference, all right, anything that you may want to be able to reference in your code where you're referencing something that's one of your GUI components, it's never a bad idea if you're writing your own routines to put ViewV in there, all right? And I want to quickly tell you why that's really, really, really important, all right? And that is when I come over to here and I run this. So this is mine in action, so to speak. Again, I'm going to go over every line of code that's in here as we go on. But when you look at this, when I first ran this, if you look up on the screen here, when I first ran this, all right, and it came up, I didn't really try to break it, which is not a good thing. I should have tried to break my own code, and I didn't. Then, right before we came back, we started here, I went in here and I brought it up like this, and I clicked clear. All right, and nothing happens. That's good. But when I clicked clear before and I didn't have the ViewV in my ClearRoutine, the program broke. It just said the app has stopped working. So if you're ever working on anything like that and it breaks, try adding that ViewV in there. Not saying it's a fix-all. All right. All right. I also added the import for my edit text. I added the import for my for the toast. Now these are the constants I created. You may not have created the same ones, and again, it's really not and truly not that big a thing. But I said low guess was 1, high guess was 100. I let the user know when a new number had been generated. So this thing here that says random number generated, I put it in a toast, just to let the user know. All right. When they had an out of range guess, that was that message. OORG, out of range guess. NITA, no input, try again. Too low guess again. Too high guess again. All right. Again, you should be to the point where I don't mean that so it's you're working on your own app now, and Amin's doing some kind of game, and he's always giving the user hints or doing whatever. I don't mean he should have 300 different strings that are in there like that. You know what I'm saying? But don't at all feel bad about using constants. All right? Does that make sense to people? I mean, if you checked yours and you said minus, or you said you literally hard coded the values, it would still work. All right. But one thing that I'm hoping to do, and I haven't even started on this yet, but one thing that I'm hoping to do with you as we get through chapters 5 through 9 is I want to take this game and I want to make changes to it, such as, well, I want you to either be able to put your guess in there or to be able to use a slider to do one or the other. All right. Now, you can't do both because that's going to kind of be confusing. All right. But you can use one or the other. Hey, there's a place for radio buttons, isn't it? So we'd say something like slider, manual. Maybe that's not great, but something along those lines. All right. And I want to have a thing with checkboxes in here because that's all the stuff that gets discussed in this section. All right, the next section that we're going to start on Thursday. And why not take something we've already got that already works and use that? To me, that would make sense to do that. All right? All right. My program variables, this is one time. And again, one thing you got to all realize this. Even if you're typing it, you don't have to look at me, but please listen to this. If you are writing your own app, and that app is real-time sensitive, in other words, let's say, you go back again, I said, let's say Amin is creating a game. If you make every single thing in your program global, it slows the program down. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, because all those memory locations are being held, the system does more work with reconciliation with a lot of global variables. Now, there aren't many in here, so it was okay. It's not a big thing one way or the other. But you don't want to make everything in the world global if you've got a very complex app, because it may slow it down. And if you might have the best game in the world, but if it runs really slow, maybe I told you this, but I'll always remember this. The guy who got me to stop playing guitar, he said, I've got good news and bad news for you. He was my teacher, and I said, what's the good news? And he goes, you change chords better than anyone I've ever seen, especially for a beginner. I said, what's the bad news? Well, I'm dating myself here, so I don't know if you all know about the old days when you get a phonograph record. They were 33 1/3 RPM records, the big albums. He said, you change chords at a 33 1/3 RPM speed, but we live in a 78 RPM world. In other words, I did it so slow that you couldn't even tell what song I was playing. All right? And in the same way, I don't want it where your program runs, but it runs so slow that no one will ever use it. All right? All right, and this was the global. I just made that because I used it in a bunch of places. All right? So, I think that Brady had mentioned this last week. Yeah, if you do put the cast in here, so if you do cast this, it comes back and then it gives you a warning, and it says that's no longer needed. All right? You can leave it in. It doesn't hurt anything. It gives you a warning, and the reason that I just bring it up again is in older code, you will see that in there. All right? I want you to realize in older code, you still will see that in there. All right? So, I set that up, and I immediately called new game. Now, is it pretty obvious when you look at this probably what new game is going to do? It's going to have to generate a new random number. I've got a counter called number guesses or number of guesses. I want to set that equal to 0. All right? I'm going to generate a toast when I get done. And I say that I'm going to call clear all. Well, I took that out. All right? So that's what I'm doing, is those three things. I'm resetting the counter, I'm setting a random number, all right, and I'm setting my toast. Okay? And basically I'm blanking out everything. This is the same stuff I'm doing in clear all, but I was having a problem with clear all, so I just put it in there. All right? So, number guesses is 0, set up the random number. Now, I suppose I really should have come in here and like we talked about where we say, what is it? Random number equals new random. All right. So I have to come in here and, yeah, they gave me that. All right, well, it doesn't like that, so I'm just going to take it out. All right. This high guess and low guess, that's 100, that's 1. All right, how did I get this? I Googled how to generate a random number between 1 and 100 in Java. All right, because I've been doing it a lot in C# also, and they don't do it the same way. All right. This set up that toast that basically said the number has been generated. All right, and I want you to also realize, because I probably should have changed this, it keeps it up for about 5 seconds, but probably short would have actually worked better there, because it's only up for about half that amount of time. So probably would have been better for short. The only thing I want to caution you on, I've got quite a few toasts in here because I wanted to get you used to using them. That said, there are a lot of things that you can read out there that say you should very rarely, if ever, use toasts in an app. Because a lot of times, somebody is sitting there and they're looking at their app, boom, a toast comes up, but they've moved to something else on their phone. Now they jump back again, and they never saw the toast to begin with. All right? So just you shouldn't be real liberal in your use of toast. You should be more conservative. All right? This is just going to blank out that edit text, and that's going to set the focus to that. Any questions on that? All right? My ClearRoutine, that's all it does. Same kind of thing. Set the text to nothing and request the focus. When I first ran this, if you look up on the screen here, when I first ran this, this came up and said 50, right there. I just set it right in the middle. But then I thought, well, you know what? There's nothing to say that that's what the person's going to want to do. And then I'm making them go up and remove it. Now, if you look in here, if I click calculate on here, it just says no input, try again. That's what I want to have happen. All right, we'll go over the code that does that in just a second. But that's literally what I want to have happen then. So what are we doing? This check guess, this thing that you see right here, that's what comes up when I click that button. And check guess was just something I called it. Again, is that a good name? It's the name I used. All right. So what I want to show you here is this. So what am I doing here? I've got a variable, a Boolean variable that I call no input. Is that pretty obvious when you hear a variable named no input, what that variable is checking for? No input. So I set no input equal to check for no input. And all that this says is if there's nothing in there, give a toast that says no input, try again, and return true. Remember, it's called check for no input. So if I return true, there is no input. And I don't have an else because if it was true, I already returned true. Otherwise, I return false, which means there is input. And since we've got it set up for a numeric keyboard, there can only be a number in there. We don't know yet whether or not it's a valid number, but we know it's a number. Does that make sense? Because this is the kind of logic that just has to make sense to you. All right? You know, when people say, well, I always love hearing comments like this. You know, I really want to be a computer person. I really want to make games, but I don't want to do math. What do you think a game is? A game is basically 100% math, that you build the code around the math. So if you're planning on doing a game for your app, you're going to be doing math. All right? So if there was no input, I just say return, get out. And I didn't put this in as an else, but if there was input, I call it parse the guess, which means I know there's a number, so I have to check for what? Was it out of range? All right, and if it's out of range, I want to give a message, and I want to get out. Otherwise, I know it was a valid guess, so was it too high? Was it too low? Or was it the number? All right, so when you look in here, here is the parse the guess. I add 1 to my number of guesses. They put in a number. If they put in 1,000, knowing you can only go from 1 to 100, they don't know how to play the game, but they made a valid guess. Maybe that would have been better to num valid guesses. I don't know, but you get the idea. All right. Hopefully you all, if you look on the screen here, even if you're copying some of this down, this right here, see that in blue? See that? You shouldn't be plugging that in here and saying if guess.text, etc. Why not make that into a variable so I'm able to use that variable all over the place so I'm not constantly reusing get text and having to convert it and do this and do that? That's a one-time shot right there. Plus, it allows us to use something that you learned back at the beginning of Java, integer.parseInt. So that's taking whatever value I put into that edit text, and it's converting that value that I now know is valid into an integer. And then I say if that guess was less than 1 or it was greater than 100, I give them a toast that says out of range guess. All right? I show it, boom. There's nothing else to do there. Otherwise, I know if it's in here, it was a guess between 1 and 100. I don't know if it's too low. I don't know if it's too high. I don't know if it's correct. But since the chances of it being correct are literally 1 out of 100, I put that one last. All right? Whether I put the check for the too low or the too high first, that's always up to you. All right? But if it was too low, I give them the too low toast. If it's too high, I give them the too high toast. And otherwise, they got it correct. All right? I noticed, and somebody had said this the other day, but you know, in here, when you do this, that's an integer variable right there. If I put a dot in there, it doesn't show me toString. It just likes to print out the integer variables. It'll convert it itself, it appears, to a string. Fine. I don't care. It's fine with me. And since I got it correct, I immediately call new game. Why? Because when I call new game, it comes back up here, resets my number of guesses, gives me a new random number, gives me a toast showing I've got that new random number, clears out my edit text, and puts the focus there. So again, how that thing shrinks, it gets bigger, but it does. But if I come in here and run this, now if I put in 50, for example, okay, too high, try again. Clear, boom. So I put in another number. Notice if I click calculate, it tells me no input. Try again. Doesn't give that as a guess. All right, but if I come back here, it said 50 was too high. I'll try 25. Says that's too low. All right, so I know it's between 50 and 25. Boom, do this again. I think in the middle is right around 37. Too low. So again, I'm getting there. Clear again. That's too low. That's my fourth guess, I believe. Should have kept track, but I didn't. Too high, so it's got to be 45 or 46. Well, now I know what it is. And it tells me you've got it, the secret number, 45 and 7 guesses. All right. Now, you're going to do something similar to that tomorrow. So it's a little bit more complex. But if you can do this and you understand what's going on with this, you should be all right. All right. And I'll tell you what I'll do, too, is I will literally, so if you want to see it, I'm going to leave all that up there literally for just a second. So that's basically everything there. And you'll have to watch the tape. I'm getting really tired of printing out all this hard copy all the time. And although he hasn't said much to me, I think Charles is getting pretty tired of me printing out all these hard copies too. All right. There's the new game, so you can always go back and watch that tape if you are so inclined to do so. And I will tell you, if you ask, there is no way in heck that this is the best I could write this. It was the best I could write it between 12 o'clock, all right, when my first class ended, and 12:35 when this class started, and eating lunch. All right, so that's when I did it. So again, virtually as I'm scrolling through here fairly slowly, all of the stuff is on there if you do want to go back and watch it. If you don't, hey, that's fine. All right. What I'm going to do, no, we're not going to take a break or anything, but I'm going to stop this run and then start another one so that we've got the stuff in there for the next chapter.